But going back to your example about Pandarus, I think it is very important. Athena actually doesn't reveal herself as Athena to Pandarus. She reveals herself as she hides herself as an acquaintance of Pandarus, and basically tries to persuade him to shoot an arrow that basically violates the treaties. They had created truce. It would violate the treatise and start the war over again. There was a brief truce there for a moment. And thereby basically sealing the fate of the Trojans and their destruction. So I think we could at least say from our front, it would be the utmost height of foolishness in order to release that arrow.
Yes.
And yet he was persuaded to do it.
Yes.
I think. And so I feel like it wasn't, well, I guess, so that's the question. You presented it as something of not a choice. But I would go back and say, wasn't it a choice?
Yeah. In that light, I would say that it is at least partially his choice. Yet I would argue that without the intervention of Athena, I don't believe that he would have shot that arrow. Without one of his friends coming about, maybe it would be Athena in this case, but without one of his friends coming about, I doubt that Pandarus would have shot that arrow. In that same way, who is it? Paris says to Helen that, I don't blame you for starting this war, as if Athena had some control over it. And we're told that when Paris decided between the three goddesses which would be the fairest, he was told his reward would be Helen if he chose Aphrodite, and he does. And because of this, he sails over to Sparta. To Menelaus, stays there for a while because of a storm, and then violates the underlying societal law of hospitality that the Greeks have. This is something that is mentioned many times in the Iliad, but one of their greatest their claims to fame would be their hospitality, as they would say. And so Paris violates this and steals Helen away. This book seems to be very misogynistic in the fact where it makes it as though Helen had no say in this, as if she just kind of went along blindly with Paris. And I'm not sure as to whether that would be the case, whether Helen actually had much choice in this. But I do see the underlying fact that the gods in this story started the movement, which could be partially blamed on the choice of these people, these human characters. Yet I still see that it's the influence of the gods that kicks all of it into motion.
So I think this is really critical, because we believe that, God hugely influences us,
Yes.
but we also have the influences of other spirits, good and bad,
Yes.
that influence us. And so we must make a choice
Yes.
between them. And it's the question, how much control, how much free will do we actually have, I think. The way you were kind of portraying it, it felt as if you were saying, they have some choice, but at the same time, it's the gods who really do it. I would really challenge you on that.
Yeah.
Because again, if it's true in that case, what makes it not true in our case, I think.
One example that I would like to bring up is Ajax, one of the great Greek warriors who is storming the Trojans and pushing them back. Yet, Zeus fills him with fear, something that is extremely uncharacteristic of this man, changing his emotions to do something that he would not normally do, which would be to retreat back to his ships. Yet, in reading from the Holy Fathers, they emphasize, in my most recent reading of St. Theophan the Recluse, he talks about this sense of spiritual awakening, and that this is something that God gives to us that allows us to sense what state our souls are in. And what this grace-filled awakening leads to is not an immediate change, but only a sending of your sentient mind to this middle ground in which you sense, I have a crossroads in front of me in which I can choose a Christian life or an earthly life. And it's made explicitly clear through his explaining of it that he is not influencing our decision, but simply laying out all the facts in front of us. And I find it kind of interesting where that's mainly what I aim to do with this paper, is not to say you must choose this, but simply say, well, if I could give a warning at the beginning saying this paper argues for private school, but that does not mean that it is the best option for you, saying that every situation is different. Yet, this paper was mainly in my head to show the facts that are not often shown and to show people the benefits that I have seen through private school.
To me, that's a little interesting too. I would say that more than maybe any other, let's say, artist of literature, I feel as if Homer does an incredible job of also laying down, here are all the problems that you as human beings will face in your life.
Yeah.
And he wisely says, he doesn't give you a solution for it. He merely says, these are the problems and this is how it's handled.
Yes.
Basically, as much as possible, showing man as he is, without grace. And so, going back then to the choice of free will then. Did the Trojans choose their own destruction?
Which point would you like to start from? Because I could go all the way back to Paris and his decision of Aphrodite, or his decision to steal Helen, at which I do believe he was conscious of his actions, knowing that stealing the queen of the Spartans would start a war.
Right.
Or would you like to go to a different point in which Pandarus shoots an arrow, or which any of the other heroes make a decisive action that changes the course of the war?
A good example would be Hector. At several junctures, probably. Like, should he have scolded Paris? Yeah, the way that he did.
Yeah.
And Hector's emphasizing there that there had to have been some freedom of choice. He calls him like lustful and cajoling or something like that. But then, the very end, Hector is at war with his own thoughts.
Yes.
Making a choice with his parents extending their hands and pleading with him, come inside the walls. It's shame because it was his idea to be out there in the first place and it didn't quite work.
Yeah, that was a very interesting section to me.
Yeah, well, it's getting pretty much to the climax of the book, I guess. But you could narrow it that way. To what he's an embodiment of Troy.
Yes. Yeah. I think he's an embodiment of the best of Troy.
Yeah, I think that must
he
be
gets
true.
destroyed.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
So then you would say in the affirmative, yes, they well, I guess then, sorry, is their destruction the result of their choice?
I would say yes, but through a process of lots of their choices. But your example that you gave is actually very interesting to me, because through this we can see that in his mind he battled between going into the walls, foregoing all of his honor in war, basically saying none of that mattered because now I'm a coward, or going out and fighting knowing that he would die. But in the end, when he saw Achilles, he was stricken with fear. He lost all thought and he fled like a rabbit, with no thought in his mind between either of those two choices. Pure instinct kicked in. I could even pull up a quote from Homer saying that. And I found that very interesting because it's almost as if he completely bypassed any thoughts of Hector's and simply makes him out to be a purely instinctual animal in that instance. I thought that was very interesting.
Well,
Even though and what's ironic about that is because there was so much deliberation. There were 2 or 3.
Oh, right.
No, honestly, there was.
And then in the snap, I hadn't thought about it in that way, but yeah, it snaps
so
and then he's
to
running
me
around.
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Sorry, that you've shed light on something, which is when we give in to our passions, do we become less than human?
I would love to look at this in 2 different ways. One, from the fallen aspect of human nature, in which we do have this fallenness within our soul that we naturally fall into as fallen creatures. Or from the literary aspect of the difference between these instincts that you have to flee that which is going to destroy you, and the moral decisions that Hector decides to make between, like he explicitly tells his wife, I'm not going to flee from the battle to save you, but what I will do is I will make sure that I am dead long before you ever get captured. And so he does make that moral decision, and I think that if he were born in a different age, he would have made a different decision. Or if he were raised in a different culture, he would have made a different decision. But he was raised to be the best of Troy, and because of that, he makes that decision towards glory in war rather than his family even. And there are many reasons when I was reading that chapter, which I gave for him still being an honorable character, even though he chooses a less honorable choice in our minds. And so through this, the difference between this choice that he makes and being an instinctual animal is interesting.
Well, and I'm thinking of, for example, Paris is a great example of someone who gives into his animal lust, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
He becomes a pig. And you said earlier Hector becomes a rabbit.
Yes.
I think. And I suppose it's sort of like, so what, man by sinning becomes animalistic on some level. Now I'm alternatively he can become a demon. So
Yes.
I've heard that kind of dichotomy used. But I found that, I thought you brought an image to my mind that was powerful with that.
Yeah. You know, something else I would like to note is that each of those three gods did not give him a moral choice or an unmoral choice. They each tried to provoke one of the passions of man. At the